Now, we're joined from Bradford now, as promised by the Shadow Transport Secretary, Andy McDonald. Andy McDonald, welcome to the programme. For about the past month, we've been told you have to wait when we ask where's the money coming from, how do you cost it? We've been told wait for the manifesto. So the manifesto is published today, lots of detailed costings in it. You want to nationalise the national grid. Its market cap at the moment is about 40 billion. How would you pay for nationalising it?
Well, John McDonald's going to roll all of those figures out over the next few days in great detail, Andrew. So I won't trespass into his territory, but it does make some sense.
Hold on, Mr. McDonald. We've had to listen.
Isn't going to be costing us an absolute fortune.
You told us all would be revealed when the manifesto was published. You're now saying we have to wait again? I mean, does the manifesto not tell us how you will pay for the nationalising of the national grid?
Well, it sets out very clearly that there needs to be a rebalance of where the emphasis lies in terms of raising taxes. And this is quite a fundamental change so that it can uplift everybody and not just concentrate on those who are fortunate enough to be extremely rich and done very well. We want to uplift everybody. So that's the thrust of our excellent manifesto, Andrew.
But I've looked at I've managed it's 128 pages, so I'm not across at all. But I have looked at the funding pages. You want to raise almost 50 billion to spend on various things, but nationalising the national grid's not included in that 50 billion that you're raising. So where will the money come from for that?
Well, I mean, that is just part of a taxation and spend programme, Andrew, and the money will come for that in the fullness of time. I think if you've got the wording in front of you, and I haven't, I think you will find that it does say that that is something we want to achieve over time. Okay. So that's not going to be, that's the ambition of that manifesto commitment.
What about the water companies, which you also want to nationalise? Thames Water, one of the biggest, that alone is worth about £12 billion. How would you finance that?
Well, again, Andrew, we've set out how we look to the very richest in our society to make a better contribution.
Right.
We're going to be looking at
nationalisation, Mr. McDonald.
That's not to take them back up from 19. Well, those are the funds that we will be drawing on to fund the entire programme. And it is about making sure that those corporate entities who are enjoying and will continue to enjoy the lowest corporation tax in the G7 will flourish and continue to flourish, but that they make that proper contribution. We've also got a £36 billion tax gap to fill, which quite frankly has been given little regard by the Tory government. They've been quite content for people to offshore their earnings, be it Uber or who else, because they're part of the same elite and the vested interest that we're so determined to tackle head on. And that's where funding comes from to achieve this very ambitious programme.
But you hope to raise about £6 billion more from raising taxes of the top 5%. But you've already told us that that money will go to finance more money for the NHS, not for the water company purchase or the national grid or the Royal Mail. So where does the money come for that?
No, you're quite right. What we're saying is we will protect 95% of the working population. They will not see any tax rises, national insurance contribution rises. What we will ask is that the very richest to make a small contribution, and we're asking corporations who benefit so much from trading in our country to again make that small contribution and still be at the lowest rate in the entire G7.
But both the money that you hope to raise from increasing corporation tax and the money you hope to raise from raising taxes on the top 5%, that's already spent in your manifesto on things like the NHS, on abolishing tuition fees, on social care, and so on. It's not being spent on what I'm asking you about, which is the cost of nationalisation.
Andrew, it's hot off the presses. It was published at 11 o'clock. Now, John McDonald is going to be setting that programme out in very great detail, in further detail, Andrew. And I'm not going to trespass into his territory when he's going to give you that clarity that you will have in abundance.
Have you read the manifesto, Mr. McDonald?
I have indeed. I've had I was at the Clause 5 meeting when we looked at the draft that that we agreed on on that day, and of course this is the published format that I looked at this morning.
Right. Okay, good. So if you've read it, which, as I say, I've not yet had the privilege of doing all of that, but if you've read it, what does the manifesto say about financing the nationalisation of National Grid, the water companies, and the Royal Mail?
Well, as I've said, Andrew, we've set out that programme. We've told you very clearly where monies are coming from.
So where is it coming from? Tell me again. I assume I'm a slow learner. Tell me again.
Well, Andrew, I've said to you, let John McDonald roll that out in very great detail.
But is it in the manifesto?
It's absolutely hot off the presses, and my understanding is it's there, but
you've read it.
Like you, it's been we're trying to keep this one under wraps until about 11:15, and as you say, it's several hundred. It's quite a weighty tome. So if you give me a chance, I'll have a good look at it.
You're going to increase the bank levy. You're going to increase corporation tax by a third. You're going to increase capital gains tax. You're going to introduce a financial transactions tax. You're going to put a cap on top pay. You're going to have higher taxes for those earning over $80,000 a year. You're going to put a levy on companies that pay high salaries. What allowances have you made by doing all that the behaviour in companies of companies and people will change, and you won't get the money you think?
Well, I think those are modest and reasonable proposals, and it makes all the sense in the world to me that when people are trading with shares, then they at 0.5%, if they're then getting into the trading on derivatives, that there should be some transaction from that, when a cost of that, when they're gambling on the increase or decrease in those shares. It's a financially profitable activity. And
what if they take the transaction abroad? What if they go abroad?
It's a very, very tiny.
What if they go abroad?
Well, I mean, individuals or corporations.
Both.
I mean, you're talking about people who. Some people may go off to buy an island in the Caribbean, but
they may just go to Switzerland or Brussels or Luxembourg.
No, I'm absolutely convinced that there's that patriotic commitment to our country, and these are modest contributions that we're asking for. You've got to remember that the corporation tax was at 28%. I mean, we're talking now of getting it all the way down to 17%, and Lord alone knows what's going to happen if ultimately a Conservative government that's re-elected takes us down to 12%. What's going to happen then to our National Health Service and our schools and our social care? Okay. These are the things that are crucially important to everyday people, ordinary people. These are their priorities, and you've got to have a tax base, a reasonably structured tax base that makes sure that those provisions are made for them.
Now you are also got a lot of money that you want to borrow to spend on what's generally called infrastructure investment. But you will not be allowed to bid for that infrastructure investment if the senior management is paid 20 times more than the lowest paid worker. Are you aware of any infrastructure companies, British or foreign, where the ratio is 20 to 1 or below? Any?
Well, Andrew, I can't give you a direct response to that. But what I can tell you is I think it's eminently reasonable that there be some relationship between those people who are working hard every day, creating that wealth, and the individuals at the top of that organisation. Pay scales have got out of hand, and they're at ridiculously comparative rates between ordinary people who are going about their day and creating the wealth for that company. It's only right and proper that there should be a relationship between the two.
Right.
So I don't anticipate that that's going to impinge. But
well,
I think it's entirely right
no,
that
if you
people
look at the
who
world's...
are going to want to invest in our country that they make sure that they are abiding by our systems,
Sure.
and they make their proper contribution.
What happens if the infrastructure companies say, what happens if they say, we're not going to do that? We're just not going to bid for these British infrastructure contracts. The world is full of infrastructure contracts. We are not going to cut the salaries of our senior management to suit a Labour government. What do you do then? How do you build the new railways and the roads and so on? How do you do it?
The problem that we've had in this country for many years is that people coming to invest have found our infrastructure woefully inadequate. And what we've laid out is our commitment to invest in our infrastructure, to make sure that we've got our transport infrastructure
I understand
that is fit
that's
for the
not my
21st century.
point.
And that's
My
what a Labour
point is that the
government will do.
condition you're making could lead
you're
to an
predicting-
infrastructure strike that the
predicting
companies
Armageddon,
won't bid.
No, I'm not convinced that that's the case at all, Andrew. I think that these companies will want to invest in our country. They know that they've got a government who wants to work with them, but there's got to be some sense prevails in terms of the excesses that are drawn out of the system. And I certainly don't think that a government of the United Kingdom should be party to simply pouring money into the coffers of a tiny minority. These investment strategies have got to be for the benefit of the entire country, not for a handful of individuals. That's just obscene. And we've got to make sure that the entire nation benefits, not just a few.
All right, Andy McDonald, lots more to talk about. But